All right, good morning. I'm going to try to give you some pointers today on connecting boards with screws, essentially. I see a lot of adults and youngsters alike struggle with putting boards together with screws. They get really frustrated, and there's just a couple simple concepts that will make this a lot better for you, a lot more enjoyable. So basically what we have here is first of all, you want to know what kind of lumber you're using, okay? Hardwood lumber is really dense. Screws are not going to go in nearly as good, and then you use different kinds of screws. A screw that you normally use for hardwood lumber is really fine thread. Like the threads are really close together compared to a screw for softwood. So this screw right here would be for more of your softwood lumber. This would be for your hardwood lumber. You can kind of see they're spaced differently. If you use this in softwood lumber, it will probably work, but it'll strip out a little bit quicker. If you use this in hardwood lumber, it'll probably break the screw or crack the board. So it's definitely a bummer to use the wrong screw in the wrong application. So what I have here is just two chunks of 2x4s. This would be considered a softwood lumber. And a lot of times when you're connecting 2x4s, you're going to use a really long screw. So this would be a deck screw. Now what I want you to notice here is this section right here has no threads whatsoever on that section, and there's a reason for that. The reason for that is to help reduce friction in this point. So as I'm putting the two boards together, you don't want any threads in the top board. Whichever board's on top, you don't really want many threads grabbing that top board. You want most of the threads in the bottom board. So this is the screw that would work good for this application. You can see how most of the threads are going to be in the bottom board and not the top board. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. And to help make that even go better, you're going to put in what's called a pilot hole. So a pilot hole, it only goes to the top board. So this is just a drawing of my two boards. The pilot hole is just going to go through the top board. So I call this the pilot hole, and it's going to go right through just that top board. Okay, so the diameter of that drill bit is going to be larger than the screw itself. So for example, on this long deck screw, we want the pilot hole to be the diameter of the screw right there, like pretty much the whole diameter, so it almost drops right in. So this drill bit's even maybe just it's about the right size, I think. So I'm going to just take this, and I'm going to drill through my top 2x4, which is my top board. Okay, and now these threads should almost drop right through. So there's just a little bit of resistance, but not much at all. I can put that through the rest of the way just by turning it from hand. So now I can take this, and when I screw these together, it should go really well for me. All right, as I put these together, this is just fine, soft lumber. Okay, and it went pretty good. Okay, notice there's no gap here. That's because I use that pilot hole. Now, if I want to bring this to the next level, make this a little bit easier for me, and you can kind of hear my driver bit slip a couple times on that. I can what I like to call pre-drill. So now what I would do is I take this spot right here, and I like to call this the pre-drill. So this will be the pre-drill hole. The pre-drill hole is going to be smaller. It's going to be the diameter of the shank of the screw. So the shank of the screw is this part right here that goes all the way through. So we're trying to find a drill bit that is the size of the shank, but the threads are still bigger. So I think this one was pretty close. I might go just one notch smaller. All right, so this one's just one notch smaller. In this case, it'd be better to have just a little bit too small. So you can kind of see that's the diameter of the shank of the screw. So now I can put this in my drill. And this would be my second board, okay? This would be my second board. I'm going to drill down with that. Okay, and then obviously I have some marks, lined up where that needs to be. And put my driver bit back in. So now I have to you know, make sure these holes are going to line up. So I would either have my marks, so I could clamp this together. Okay, I just aligned it so they're in there, and then I can drill down in there. And that one went even easier because I had that pilot hole, made that even nicer for myself. So now we have a couple more things we can do to make this even better. One thing you might want to do, especially on the hardwood lumber, you might want to countersink this a little bit. So there's two types of countersinks. One type of countersink just goes like this. Okay, so this is a countersink. And the countersink is just designed to keep the head of the screw flat with the wood. Now sometimes on these, the softwood lumber, that will just kind of automatically happen. But if you want to guarantee that will happen, you can use one of these tools. This is a countersinking bit. They make all different styles. This one here has a drill bit hooked onto it, so this will accomplish more than one thing. This would accomplish your, it could accomplish your pilot hole, your pre-drill, and your countersink all at once. But this one I think is just a little bit better. So now I would just take this and drill this to the top of the hole. So this one is really easy to use. It just kind of knocks off those the edges at a 45 so that it makes that nice little flat countersink. So when I put the screw back in, it lays nice and flat with the surface. And this one I have a little bit below the surface, but you can see that's just a really nice touch there. So the last thing that I like to do that really works out really nice is to, instead of doing a countersink, you do a counter bore. So the counter bore goes about halfway through the board. Okay, and I'm going to call this the counter bore. The purpose of the counter bore is to actually hold, to hide the screw so you don't see it, because screws obviously aren't going to look very good. So if you can hide those, it will even turn out a lot better for you. So for that one, I'm going to grab, you can use any type of drill bit, but I really like to use what's called a Forstner bit. So this has a really nice clean, it drills a really nice clean hole. You can also use, you know, a spade bit or a twist drill bit or any of those that you might want to use. So this is a spade drill bit right here, just real flat. They cut really fast, but they're not quite as nice. And then we have, you know, your standard twist drill bit, works from wood, metal, plastic, whatever. This one's really only wood. If you use this in metal, it takes the edge right off, and you have a lot of problems. So for this one, if I have a drill press available, I'll usually use the drill press for this one. But for the countersink, I'm just going to go down about halfway through. Okay, so I just went down about halfway through the board with that, and see how nice and clean. I mean, just a tiny bit of sanding to do, but not much. So now, after I do my counter bore, I'm going to do my pilot hole, which is right here. So the pilot hole is still going to be about the size of the whole diameter of the screw. So for this one, I'm using my hardwood screws, and I'm going to use this drill bit, which is, you know, really, it's just the screw will drop through this first board. So I'm just going to drill this one through my first board. Alright, so now you kind of see the screws, it's going right through there. It's about, I got about 5/8 sticking out the bottom there. And that's all going to depend on the thickness of the board you have. So now on this last one, you know, I can do a pre-drill right here, okay, just like I did on this one. But these screws are really nice. Spend a little extra money and get these screws that have a self-tapper on them. So this actually acts like a little drill bit that kind of cuts right into the fibers of the wood. So for this one, I'm just going to give it a try and see if I can drill both of these through, connect these now. So just going to hold these together. I'd probably be clamping this, or, you know, some other. Push down nice and hard. Okay, so that worked really well. So now my two pieces are connected, and then I have my screw is hidden below the surface. So now I'm going to make a plug to fill that in. And before I do that, though, I want to show you my drill index. This is a great tool. It's hard to figure out what size drill bit you have. I mean, they usually say what diameter it is right there on the drill bit. But if you have a drill index, you can just plug these into the right hole and it will tell you the right diameter right underneath them. So this is called a drill index. It's a really cheap tool that really will save you a lot of frustration. So one other thing I want to say before I show you how to finish up the plug is if I'm trying to mount like a hinge. So like right here, let's say I have a hinge, you know, there's the barrel of the hinge, it goes up. I'm trying to connect a board here with the hinge. You're really going to want to use a pre-drill for those hinges, because the screws you get with the hinges are real weak. Usually the heads break right off, things like that. So I really like to drill pre-holes, do some pre-drilling for any times I'm putting a screw, like a really delicate screw, especially in any hardwood lumber at all. So once again, the pre-drill is a hole that is a hole that's the size of the shank of the screw. So the pre-drill is the size of the diameter of the shank of the screw. Your pilot hole is the diameter of the screw. It just falls right through. And then we have our countersink and our counter bore. All right, I'm over at the drill press getting ready to drill some plugs. These are not very easy to do on a hand drill, okay? If you do this on a hand drill, a lot of times it's gonna break off parts of your plug cutter. But here's the 3 plug cutters I have hanging out. They're all just different diameters. So I have 5/16, 3/8, 1/2. And I've already determined when I drill my 3/8 hole that I'd be using a 3/8 plug cutter for that. So I'm gonna put this in my drill chuck. All right, I'm gonna use my chuck key here. So for this, I'm using a piece of walnut to try to decorate it up just a little bit. So here's my piece of walnut. I don't need to drill right in the middle of it because I might actually use this board for something else. It's a pretty nice board. So I'm just going to focus on the end of the board. So I'm going to turn this on. You drill about halfway through the board. So there we are, about halfway through the board. My speed was a little bit fast on that. I might just slow the RPMs of the drill press down if you're drilling. It's a little bit bigger diameter than the last drill bit I used. So I'm going to show you how to put these in now. Now it's time to put the plugs in. So here's the plugs I just drilled, and here is this would be my good project, whatever this is, and I'm trying to hide that screw because they look terrible. So don't get lazy on there. So all I need to do to remove the plugs is I'm just going to take a straight screwdriver and I put it in there and I just snap it off and I put my finger over it because sometimes they go flying across the room. So once you take this off, it's actually upside down. So it tapers a little bit. So there's a little bit of a taper going down. So this was up and now this is down. So I flip that over. And I just apply a little glue on the outside edges of this thing. So I go around the outside, apply a little glue. It usually works out better to do it this way rather than just putting glue into the hole. So then if I'm trying to make this disappear to where I don't even know that there's a screw in there, I would line the grain up and I would use the same kind of wood, obviously. But for this one, I wanted to make it more decorative. So I'm still lining the grain up. It's going to take a finish a little better, and I press that in there with my hand. I could even take a mallet, and I could tap it in a little bit with a mallet. I only have to let this dry for maybe a couple minutes, and then I can sand this off. So it's sticking up right now, almost an 1/8 of an inch, but I can just sand that off. Sometimes you could just saw it off with a handsaw and then sand it if you want. The way to prevent it from, getting too far out is you just don't drill your hole quite as deep when you're drilling your plug. So then I would sand that right off. So, all right, just a quick review. We went over countersink, that's just making the screw flat with flush with the top of the board. We went over counter bore, where that bore's down to where I could use a plug or hide the screw. We went over a pilot hole that makes the screw just drop through that first board. And then we went over pre-drill. Pre-drill is really important on the secondary board, or if you're mounting a hinge or any type of hardware right to the surface. So hopefully you learned a couple things, and have a great day.